Hey my friends, welcome. Today we're creating beautiful farmhouse DIYs with wood pieces from Walmart. Let's get started. We're going to take this new and unused cutting board from Walmart and turn it into an old, weathered, beautiful vintage piece. And we're going to do that by using Waverly's Antiquing Wax and some white paint from Rust-Oleum. I'm going to start with applying the wax front and back of the cutting board, and I'm going to give it 2 applications. Now I want this to be very dark, so I'm going to be using this sponge applicator. If you do not want your cutting board to be this dark, you can always use a baby wipe or some type of dampened cloth, and it'll give you a much lighter application. We're going to make the cutting board look even more aged and weathered, and how I'm going to do that, I'm using this paintbrush. It's seen better days. The bristles are sticking out at odd angles. The texture of it's kind of rough, and that's great because I'm going to dry brush the paint over the cutting board, and I want it to make it appear that the color is wearing away and that it's got scratches on it, and those bristles that are sticking out at odd angles, that's perfect for it. It's just lightly brushing this white paint, and it's from Rust-Oleum. It's linen white, and I'm just gradually building it up around the edges, again making it look like the color of the cutting board is just wearing away. I want to keep this piece pretty simple and neutral, but I do want to add a little bit of detail to the cutting board. So I picked up this stencil at the same time I found the cutting board at Walmart, and I'm going to add some Mod Podge over the top of this stencil before I add the paint to help prevent bleeding. Once the Mod Podge is dry, I'll come back in with my paint, and the color paint I'm using is Celery from Waverly Chalk Paint, and I'm just very gently dabbing and pouncing over this stencil, and I'm not using a lot of paint at all. If I want to darken it up, I'll just add a little bit more paint. I'm again trying to prevent any bleeding with this stencil. Now I don't know if you can see it because it's such a small stencil. There are some little tiny flowers on there, and I originally painted them white, and then when I lifted up the stencil, I just didn't care for it. It was blending in with the white paint that I used to distress the board. So I lined the stencil back up and then came back in with some lavender sachet from Apple Barrel and just went over that, and I think it was a much better choice. I just repeated the exact same process on the top corner of the cutting board, and once it was dry, I came back in with my finger sander and just lightly sanded over each of the painted areas just to help it blend in a little better with the cutting board. We're going to make a little small swag to add to the cutting board, and I'm just using a variety of greenery I had on hand. This green eucalyptus, that is from Amazon. The little leafy green bits is from the Dollar Tree, and the little white branch, that's from Michael's. And y'all, I pulled the tag off, so I'm not real sure what the name of that is. Sorry about that. But I'm just grouping them together, and once I get them placed just like I want, I'll kind of pinch them together and hold them in place, and then I'll add a little bit of hot glue right at the top of the greenery, just above the leaves, and then I'm just going to start wrapping this rope around the stems, and I'm going to wrap it all the way to the very tip of the stems, and then I'll snip off that rope and then add a little more hot glue and just tap it into place. Then I'll add a little more hot glue right to the center of the handle and pop the swag into place, and it's finished, y'all. I think this is just such a beautiful rustic farmhouse piece, but of course if rustic and distress is not your taste, you could absolutely skip that for this piece and just add the stencils and the greenery, perhaps even a bow. I even went back and forth if I should add a bow, because y'all know I love my bows, but I think it is just gorgeous in its simplicity. But I would love to know what your thoughts are. I'm so happy to be a part of the What Would You Make collaboration today. It's hosted by Brenda from Rustic and Lace DIY and Christine from Divine Design. And this month the guest host is Katie from Lady Red Crafting. I'll have their channels along with that playlist down in the description box. Make sure you go tell everybody hello. And if you're here from the playlist, hi, welcome. So happy to have you here. For this project, we're going to be using this wooden palette from Walmart, and I'm going to start by giving it 2 coats of Rust-Oleum's Linen White, and this is going to be our base coat because we're going to be attempting to do the crackle effect. Now you will want to make sure this layer is completely dry before we move on to the next step. After your paint is dry, I let mine set overnight. You can come back and put down your layer of school glue. And I'm using Elmer's because it's what I have on hand, and I'm just putting down a very generous layer, as you can see. But I'm going to do that to each of the 4 slats, just using the sponge applicator. I've also used a brush, so either one will work. And I'm just making sure I have a smooth, even layer on each of the slats. Whenever I do this technique, I like to load my brush with enough paint that I can do one complete stroke all the way down the board, flip it over, and do one more stroke all the way up. Ideally, whenever you're doing the crackle technique, the less that you go over the paint and glue mixture, the better, because the more you go over, the more you're going to mix those two together, and it will lessen your crackle effect. Well, spoiler alert here, I went over mine too many times. I just wasn't paying attention. I was listening to an audiobook, so I wasn't paying attention. But y'all, I have to tell you, I love the effect that I did get. It might not be the crackles I was going for, but you'll see in just a moment once it dried. It was beautiful. It looked like weathered boards that you would find at the beach that's been left out in, the weather and elements, and it is just gorgeous. And you'll have to tell me at the end what you think, but I think it actually works better with my project. I did hit the ends of the boards with my sanding block. I just wanted to distress them a little bit more and to show some more of the white that's underneath the green. And because we're going to be adding wax in just a moment, I took a lint-free cloth and just give it a really good wipe down. I want to add Waverly's Antiquing Wax to the palette, but I don't want it to be too dark. So to prevent that, I'm going to put down a layer of their clear wax first. I'm just using a chippy brush and just lightly brushing it over each of the slats. And I will immediately follow up with the Antiquing Wax, again using a chippy brush. I'm just dabbing off the excess, and then I'm going to focus on the outer edges of the palette and then in between each of the slats. And then whatever's left over on the brush, I'll just very lightly brush it over the center of the slats. And I'll just continue to do that and just slowly building it up. Now again, this is where you can go as light or as heavy as you want, or if you want to skip this step completely, absolutely, and it would be just fine. We're going to be adding these stickers from the Dollar Tree to the front of the palette, and it says faith. It does not make things easy, it makes them possible. Luke 1:37. Such a pretty Bible verse, I just love it. But as you can see, the H is a little too big in the word faith, so I'm just trimming that down, and then I'm going to center the word faith up as much as I can right in the center of that top plank and just smooth it out. Y'all, I have to tell you, these stickers are so forgiving. If you get them off just a little bit and you need to readjust, just gently lift them up, and then they just really adhere to your surface when you have to put them back down. Now the next section, it does not make things easy, was just one big section, so I'm cutting that down. I'm going to make that into 2 sayings, and I'm just going to stagger them all the way down the palette, just smoothing them out really well. And then for a little extra security, and because these are stickers and I don't want them to look like stickers, I will come back in just a bit and add Mod Podge on top. I'm going to put a layer of Mod Podge all the way across the plank. 1, we want to seal in our words, make sure it's not going to come up. And 2, if you only slap Mod Podge right on top of the word, you will be able to tell. So if you go all the way across, you won't see any distinction and just makes everything look the same. We're going to decoupage these beautiful peach roses to the palette, and I'm going to just do a very detailed or fussy cut. I usually use the water method, a little paintbrush and water, but for this project I felt that doing a fussy cut would work better, and y'all, they are so beautiful. I got this napkin from Napkin World. You just go to eBay, type in Napkin World, and they have the most beautiful napkins there. But of course you can use whatever you have on hand. And once you get everything cut out, you will want to make sure you remove all the excess layers. This one happened to have 3 layers, so you will want to remove those 2 bottom layers before you decoupage onto your surface. Since we've already added the layer of Mod Podge, we can skip that step, and we're going to be using what I call the heat method or iron-on method. It's where you use heat to reactivate that dried Mod Podge and will cause your napkin to adhere to your surface. And I'm just finding my placement, and where I accidentally snipped off one of the leaves, I'm just lining that up there as best I can. I'm going to put my sheet of parchment paper over the top. Then I'll just carefully place my iron on top of the parchment paper and use the heat from the iron to reactivate that Mod Podge. And then I'll just repeat the exact same steps 2 more times because we're going to be adding flowers to the top of the palette. I used an X-Acto knife to cut away the excess napkin that was covering the opening between the 2 slats. I don't know why I didn't show you, sorry about that. Anyway, then I just used my little small fingernail file and just kind of went in between the 2 openings and just gently filed away that excess napkin, and then a couple of the leaves was hanging over the edge, and I just used my finger sander to file that away. And that's it, guys, it's all done. I think it turned out so gorgeous, and in my opinion, you would never know that I used a sticker for the words. If you have a Cricut, obviously you could create this on your Cricut. I don't, so I try to find alternatives for using a Cricut. Maybe one day I'll get one, who knows, but I would love to know what you think about it. Tell me down below. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching my video. If you enjoyed it, I hope you'll smash that subscribe button. Thank you to Christine, Brenda, and Katie for hosting and guest hosting today's video. Don't forget the playlist is down in the description box. Go and check everybody out. You won't regret it, and I will see you soon.